Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Isaiah. And I'm not gonna lie, we have to talk about the outfit. Please tell us, why are you just as Lucius from Mr. Incredibles, Mr. Super Suit? Where's Maz? But I would love to know, like, why
It's-
was the get up? Like, I love it.
Well, a few things. I think the most immediate thing that comes to mind right now, I'm thinking about Makami. I hope I'm saying his name right now, as an artist. And one thing that I was just relating to, because he had a mask on, I'm like, oh, yeah, no. He's wearing a Haitian flag. And, so people asked him about, like, why is he wearing this? And he was saying, it's the focus is on the message, not the
Yeah.
messenger. And that was one thing. Also, I do a lot of running in the morning. And when I'm running in the morning, early in the morning, I particularly love this feeling of like just being incognito, and it's this idea of just like
Yeah.
running through the wind super early and just having a sense of like privacy. And it feels good. It just feels
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, no more anything else, but just like kind of explain it away, but it feels right.
Yeah. And do you find that it's so interesting, because I think one thing that I based off of when you and I met, like, I just want to say thank you, because you're the first person that taught me about the idea of containers and what the importance of energy work within the process of creation, not just for yourself, but with whoever it is that you're creating with. And for me, it's interesting because it's like you're kind of releasing a element of thought, right? You don't really have to think about certain looks and appearance wise. So that's freeing up your mind, but also energetically. I feel like
Mm,
your senses are a little bit more heightened, right? You're much more in tune inside, and you're able to be more perceptive. I mean, I'm assuming that it's dark, right? The sunglasses are dark. You have headphones
mm,
in your neck.
mm.
It's like, it's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely feel a sense of inwardness, through it all. Like I said, I'm out there early in the morning, I'm running, or when I'm working out, there's a sense of I just want to really be within my own self,
Mhm.
and kind of process the world on terms that I feel comfortable with, so it's everything is energy, and I look at it as a form of protection. I look at it as a form of, just like this is where I'm at right now, and I just want to really be in this space, in this zone.
Yeah.
So it allows me to kind of, navigate the energy, may take it up, I may keep it on, but,
Mhm.
I am still who I am, with it and without it,
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
at the same time, it's also, opportunity to like see where other people at, just by your own presence,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just, being comfortable, being relaxed and yeah.
I love it. I really admire is also the name of your design studio, Unbothered.
hmm
Can you
hmm
tell the audience a little bit more around that? Like, what does Unbothered mean to you? Like, and kind of how did you recognize, or what's the tie in as it relates to any sort of visual work or assets that you do?
Well, the name really came to me when I was watching the episode was called I Am Hippolyta. And I remember that episode, this particular sister, she gets like dragged into this multi-universe and, she has like these different lives where she's in these different forms of or expressions of herself, so she goes through one life form and she's like a dancer in France. She's just free. So her daily life, she's a mom. She's like, just a super dope woman. But at the same time, she just kind of feels shackled or limited in this particular identity. So this particular episode, she's just um, kind of traversing the universe and going to these different spaces. And then one of the episodes she was in, she was teleported into like, one of the Zuni warriors. And so she's like fighting, all of like these white invaders, and one of the things that she said that really stood out to me in that episode, was like she spent so much time being, you know, everything else to everyone, and she never who she was. And I think that's something that really, no, I don't think that was something that really stood out to me. And it was just, this feeling, the sentiment, the idea that really kind of just captured everything that I was, was feeling in that moment is the feeling of being unbothered. And I think that at the same time, do I get bothered? Yes. But I'm unbothered, at the core of it, in a sense of being able to be very much in tune with who I am. And what do I feel like I want to express and bring forth an opportunity and seeing someone else's work? I think there's the kinship between the type of people that I work with and the companies that I work with, and just the teams that I work with. They exhibit and exude this sense of like, I'm here, I'm present, this a future or a vision that I want to inherit. And I'm so deliberate about how I want to go about it. I'm not considering the what ifs, or I
Mm-hmm.
can't, or possibly of other people's notions or perceptions of what is possible. So when I thought about where I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and what me can actually hold space for, not just like a moment in time, unbothered was it. It's the frame of mind.
Yeah.
Uh, when I'm tapping into it, it's the way in which I want to create work with this intentionality of saying, hey, I have something that I want to manifest. And there are potentially things that could get in the way of that. But once I like tap into this particular feeling, and there's so many ways in which I actually navigate to this idea, it just always this ring.
Yeah.
There's never a time when I'm engaging in this work and I'm doing something and I get into this feeling. It's like, all right, I know how to kind of invoke the next phase or move to the next phase, the next stage, because I'm constantly renewing this energy of like what it means to be unbothered.
Yeah. No, I love that there's so many points I wanted to hit on. I think number one, too, it's like this idea of unbothered means like also like you're just so grounded in your own truth, right? And who you are, your essence, that the creation process and whatever it is that's moving through you is always going to be different. But the way that you show up and the way that you move through it is through that nature, is that frame of mind that regardless of other people and what they think is possible, right? Their beliefs and ideas and what they want to do shouldn't be your barriers, right? It's just considerations. And I think it's a beautiful
Mm,
frame of mind to have, especially when you are in this space. You are bringing other people's visions to life while also holding them on their certain path, right? Because there's always the thing where they divest or, maybe they want to do this thing, but it's not really there. So you're kind of a shepherd, right? I'm just
mm,
imagining like
mm,
Moses parting the sea kind of just like
mm,
helping them kind of get to that place. And you have to, I find that a lot of creatives get very much like, well, you hired me as a subject matter expert, but you're not taking my advice. Where in reality, you are a conductor. Like they hired you because you've done work before that they like, but every creation that you do with any client is going to be deeply unique to them. And our role is to take our own biases out of the mix, right? But also
mm,
be able to supplement where we need to be that energetic current, as you said, right? To facilitate that. And it's
mm,
beautiful. I love that because to me, I actually in my mind, it's detachment, but there's a level of detachment, which means like it has a like to me detachment is I'm done, I'm over, but unbothered just means
mm.
I'm still doing me at the end of the day. It doesn't matter, but like I'm still doing what I need to do. I need to show up in this way, and that's the end of the day. So I love that.
Yes.
And again, the way that I kind of hold my truth, right, is this concept of moving mad, right? So it's just this idea that I will always move in a way that's true to me, and it may not make sense to you or on paper, but that's my way of ensuring that I'm kind of in this flow of creation and honoring what it is that's moving through me. And there are moments where I do actually have to move mad, which is just saying, oh, fork in the road. This is either the old way or the me way. What kind of experience have you gone through or would love to share where you can define that as your own moving mad moment, where you're like, fuck it, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna do me. And what kind of like transpired and how did that look?
Well, I think the most immediate one that comes up is about 3 years ago when I was laid off at the company I was working at, Rhino, and it was one of the best corporate roles I've ever had in my entire like design career. I would work with awesome people. Genuinely, like I was like, when everything happened, I was like, wow, man, I miss these people. And it was really one of those moments where at that time I was like kind of thrusted into like, you start sitting out your resume and you're getting feedback and I was like doing, interviews and I was like, man, the energy don't feel right, or something about just like doing this and going back and forth. It's like, I've been here, done that, and it's a sense of like, I really need to be in the space of manifesting and creating work that I was deeply connected to, where I could really move the needle or make an impact by how I could show up energetically. And that goes back to the Unbothered, where I was like in a full space to do that. And then when I was presented with opportunities after, being laid off and going after things, and I was like, I feel like if I'm going to pursue this or get this, I'm like contorting myself. It's like, I don't want to do that. I'm
Yeah.
like 35 at the time, whatever. And I'm like, I'm getting old, you know? In a sense that like, I've been here and I've done that and I don't really want to repeat this particular process. And I just felt that it was really important for me to, in a sense, go, and, my wife, she told me like, yo, this is like the time that you should go and go do that thing, and, I went all in on it and that with Berkeley Design Studio and I started to do that. But even within that, I've had waves and phases of moving mad, and I would say even more recently was, really doubling down on, okay, I gotta, outside of this design work and I do work with clients, it's like how much time and energy am I going to invest into realizing, these worlds that I have in my own head, in a sense, like really being a visual artist. And I had to get over that. Like, I'm a designer, but I'm also a visual artist. What are the new waves of skill sets? Kind of living the second life, the second career. It's like, I feel like I'm always a student, I put that first and foremost. So but I feel like when it comes to design, I've attained a certain level of mastery. I don't
You have
look
for
at,
sure.
thank you. And,
Yeah.
so like kind of going from that journey, man, which I, comes to understand it is like, you're in it, you're doing it, but you haven't really ascertained a level of mastery and going and opening up my design studio. I've doing this last few years, I can say that I've mastered the craft of manifestation of making, of, listening and questioning and making sure that I can draw out the best aspects of someone's vision, either they have it in full fledged or maybe they just like, I got pieces of it, and to have the patience. So I was like, all right, I got that. Now, how will I direct that energy inward towards me to, manifest those projects, those ideas? And I had to realize like, I had a really big issue with giving myself the own title of artist.
Yep. That's my life for the last 2.5 years. So how did you kind of like walk me through that? Was it more like, because I have this tendency where, I think for me, it was more of I didn't know the artist me.
Mm,
I only knew the creative me, right? So the creative me is the work me, like how I think and move in the world and how I structure stuff and get things done, like my craft. I had to get that down, but what I realized was I would kind of latch on to people as like, this is who I am. And then realize that I didn't have any sort of time for my own creative self or like my using my own creative energy or life force energy to create something for me because I didn't know what that was. But coincidentally, it was through, this internal battle of being like, I know I have more in me and me purposely trying to buy back time to play around with things like music and content and production work. And it's like, oh, wait, this is me. Now, what the hell are we going to do with this? But I would love to like, what was kind of that internal battle or kind of monologue you were working through, right?
And well, the common thing in the design world, and it's just like, design and art is separate. That's just a constant conversation, or a conversation that has somewhat been cemented in a sense that, like, art is this and design is that. And I understand that position, thoroughly, being a practitioner of being in the design field, right? But there were things that I just wanted to manifest just because I was in the state of feeling like this needs to be in the world. This is what I'm actually doing. So for me, the internal battle was just doing it, just setting out the time to do it, saying, okay, when I have a thought, and that kind of really prompted me to be a lot more expressive with, my internal practices, particularly like my soundboard practice. That was something that I started to really embrace, and I said, okay, well, this is what I do. Yeah, started just to embrace, those practices that were underneath the foundation to at least creating a certain level of calmness, stillness, and presence. So I started where I had access immediately. I had access to my soundboard. That's what I did. That's what I do. That's what I continually, try to pray, try to just kind of sit down and like think about the world, think about what I want to do. So when I started to embrace that, I was starting to accept that reality. And then, and just by having those internal conversations, I started to say, okay, well, who in my immediate network in my community are artists? And I just started, speaking with them, you know, um, uh, and making sure I have time to go visit them, and in doing so, I think I would say it's kind of twofold, right? Or maybe multiple parts. It's one, embracing those practices that I'm actually already doing, right? And then labeling it for my own self and relating it to it as like, okay, this is how I express myself as an artist or get myself into this emotional state via my
Yeah.
sound ball or my martial arts. Also activating community, who in my immediate community is an artist and doing this thing full time. Like, let me be around them. Let me ask them questions. Let me just be in their presence. And then on the last part, I would say, was just like, creating content that felt like I wasn't following any prescriptive rules, that I wasn't, in a sense, being trendy, but being influenced by,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the things that I'm seeing around the world, but how would I, edit that and put that into the context of what my lived experience is in the most honest way, and sitting with that. And really also, I would say, really just doing the internal work of like, I would say just praying for a better internal identity,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
opening that up and giving myself room and grace to saying like, this is the space that I could be in. So this part, doing the activities like I just mentioned, involving each community and doing the work though. But now that I look at it, it's like really it was this thing of becoming, defining, this is where I want to be. I can do this. Yeah, okay, when I'm doing this, then how does it look like? Hey, as an artist, even if I don't feel like I have all of the parts of it, like for example, I'm working on the exhibition. If you ask me what the name is, I don't have the name for it. I have all of these different things that I'm putting together, but I know one thing that I do need. I need like 20 TV VCR sets combos,
Oh,
right?
that's so fun. I can't
I
wait.
know this one's 20. I need 20. I need 20. And why I pointed that out because if I was so focused in an identity as a designer and, I would focus on hopefully I can get a client that can actually see this idea of utilizing this particular object and I'll reach out to this person, reach out to this, or wait for the client, then I can utilize this idea when it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but now I'm looking at it as the artist means that, well, I have something that I want to express. So I'll get this to these art now. And then
Yeah.
my emotion, going back to the unbothered feeling of it is like, all right, then my unbothered because I have a sense of urgency in now. So I just start texting people, my
Yep.
neighbor. I feel like my neighbor would have like a TV VCR set. Today I was on Craigslist, I just sent out a message to someone. So the moment that I really started to embrace this label, started to embrace this identity, is this immediacy. There's a sense of urgency. Like when you are called to do something, Isaiah, in this respective realm and aspect of your life, do not double think.
Nope,
And
not at all.
anytime
You
I
just gotta
was,
make it happen.
kind of swaying, should I, I'm like, no, that's not where I need to be. So my thing was like, all I need to do is that, it's like repetition, it's like developing a muscle over time, so I mean, I may think about it. If I can get down to like 10 minutes, I was going from the state of like, if I have a thought and how quickly can I have a thought on this train or this wave of like, I'm doing this because I'm manifesting an idea. That's an expression of like my art practice. And going back to the, this conversation of containers and made me think about, well, I got on my desk, but Virgil Abloh, he talked about off-white as like underneath it all, it's just an art practice. And also inspired by that because I thought about like within my design studio, like my art practice, how do I want to define it? What is it? And I finally came up with the name of it all. And I was like, no rhyme, no reason. I really wanted to create a space where like it was like a universe, a space where like there's so many different aspects of me. I am very contained to this discipline in this way, but I have a lot to offer, and
You
there's so much I want
do.
to show off and give to the world, and I want to not be limited or bucketed to anything. And when I'm operating at my best, it's like it's orchestrated chaos.
It really is like it is like I honestly tell people I'm like you step into my world it doesn't make sense to you but it's the most beautiful thing like it's like controlled chaos to an essence where it's more like it's magical like I just am really happy hearing just how you explained all of that. I think like I'm thinking back to like when you and I met a year ago and it's just so beautiful to have seen like how much you're able to like put this together. I was like, yes, like this is everything that like we talked about. And I love that you talked about your spiritual practice as something as like a translation mechanism, right? It's you worked on your foundation. You know who you are inside, right? And it's the sound bowls, the martial arts, the energy work that you do that helps well,
Mm,
tell me about like some of those practices and how they entered your life. I know that you've been doing martial arts for a while, right? And your sons do it?
yes. Yes, my son does
Yeah,
it.
I love it. And then
Um,
sound bowl, how did that come into your life? And how do you use
well,
sound in your work? Actually, that's a new discovery for me.
well, I actually bought a sample for my wife about what, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and she didn't use it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
She's
I
like,
literally have
nah.
mine, and I'm like, damn, I need to use that bitch. She's out somewhere.
Yeah, she was like, nah, this seems like it's more of a you gift than it's a me gift.
Not me.
Yeah, so it was just we it was just here in the house, and I would say, Manny, I want to say it's 2 years, but I would say it was last year I really picked it up and I started to just like practice. And one thing I love about it is like the musicality of a sample, it doesn't require you like, I used to play the piano when I was a kid and it took practice, it took attentiveness, which I'm not saying sample doesn't, but it's an instrument that one can pick up and just access immediately. It's
Mm.
very accessible,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you could be 5 years old, 6 years old, and you both hit a sound and you get this immediate reaction, okay, I cycle around and so forth. And it's easy to pick up.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And once I started picking it up and started doing it, there's a few things. I really see where I'm at right now with it. It's like, yeah, musicality, I can, produce a certain type of sound, but more importantly, it just allows for me to just sit with my thoughts, you know, um, and I started to think about the work that I'm doing, and across the board. And for me, I'm super, 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 super big on these aspects of my life: designer, father, entrepreneur, husband, community person, friend. And it's all of these aspects of myself like have to be working congruently and harmonizing with one another. And I'm always in the throes of making sure that, you know, my heart, my mind, and my spirit is like really in sync. And
Yeah.
I found that this particular practice allows me to first and foremost be present. It's a beautiful sound. I can do it anywhere, any place. And even more so right now, where I'm at with my practice and talking about like, you know, being unbothered and be self-expressive. Now, when my son is having soccer practice, I whip out my bowls while he's doing soccer and I'm just like in the middle, sit down, just practice it. And I started to feel like this correlation between, is the beauty in it? There, I love the accessibility of it, you know, when I have opportunities like, you know, like my children, they're like, they gravitate to it. You know, I can like help them and not help them, but they can practice if they want to. But really the way it's right now, my practice is that it's just a meditation, you know, for me, my mind sitting down, meditating, being quiet is challenging because my mind is like really always racing. So to me, the sound bowl was and is kind of that entry point for me to sit still,
Yeah.
you know, be present. All right, I'm gonna do 20 cycles. And you know, you're going like this, your mind can start drifting, but after a while, you know, okay, like 12, and you just like you're in it. And before I know it, like, you know, time has elapsed. But there's never a time when I do, I always do it. And then like, it's just a certain level of like,
Hmm.
you know, I'm not saying everything in my life just automatically becomes better, but
Yeah.
it's just this ability to be able to, all right, see things with just a little bit more clarity because it
Yeah.
just allows me to breathe, you know, I people do breath work, you know, but for me, I look at it like a lot of the things that we are confronted with or even maybe challenged with, there's a certain corresponding breath to anxiety. It's a certain corresponding breath to like being serene and calm and deliberate. And for me, I've been leveraging that as a way to just be able to be more settled. Okay, this is great. I started incorporating other music, you know, in the background. And it's become something that
Hey,
I
you
just
need a mix. I got you. I've been wanting to do
definitely
those. I said if you ever need a mix,
need a mix. Okay, okay.
I make beats now, so we could do something.
Good up.
Let's make it happen.
Good up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, I make beats. I produce music now. Yeah, so yeah, I do
Mm,
that. Have I've I've been wanting to put like sound healing sound,
mm,
like the frequency on top of like music. So it's like something people listen to and then they can kind of, hear it, hear stuff to it, and kind of just go out throughout their day. But I think music and sound in general is one of the
mm,
most it's interesting because I want to say grounding, but I think it's like a drop back into reality or a present moment. Um, like the way that you would describe your mind and it's constantly racing, my mind just leaves my body. It's just out there just floating in the ethers, collecting stuff, and I'm over here just mindlessly kind of moving throughout my day. And it's usually a sound or a song or, something that rings. And then I'm like, wait. And then I kind of drop back. And it allows me to then be able to sit with what was happening and then make sense as to like what was I doing before. Well,
mm,
then like what was happening that I was like kind of in this weird space and using that to find clarity because I was like, oh, I
mm.
wonder what that brought me back into. Like, where was
Yeah.
I? What drifted apart?
Yeah.
And more importantly, like when it comes to it, it helps me it's a rhythm thing for me. I
Mm,
find that
mm.
with music, it helps me set my pace. It helps me set my rhythm. It helps me kind of have that control, not necessarily control, but I'm playing a part in how I feel comfortable taking that next step. And so, if I am, knowing I have to do something that might be a little tricky or hard or scary, I play a track that I know that will get me to feel like I can do it. My rhythm is going
Mm,
to get into this, but I'm like excited to do it. My body completely and my mind forgets that I have to do it. and I'm just dancing as I'm doing it. It's like a way of just getting ahead of certain things, but also more
Yes.
importantly, just reminding me what my baseline is. My baseline is my music turns me back to my baseline, like homeostasis.
Mm, mm,
Mhm. And so when you think about your other work,
yeah.
about Qigong, because I have looked into it, it's again has helped place a lot of words to energy practices that I just embody and do naturally. But I'd love to
Mm,
know what your experience was and how you use it in your creative process, the way you live life.
yes. Qigong, I got introduced to that like right before the pandemic happened, like a few months. And this was when Hill House was open. That's just on Fulton in Brooklyn. And so I walked in, I had a class, and my sensei, Daryl, and he was teaching. And immediately, within the first class I participated, and I was like, yo, this is it. I love it. There was this sense of, for me, like meditation and movement. Like I said, my mind is just like going, 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 going. So I wanted to have a practice that felt that I was feeling myself, but at the same time, I was, being able to like move my body. Uh, I'll just tell you what it has done for me. One time I was practicing and quite, I'm recalling this memory as I'm actually writing to think about this. So I was doing one of the forms, like the very first form, and since they always still was like, hey, if you're practicing by yourself, like go through this particular form like 9 times. And when I'm doing it, that frame, it takes about 20 minutes. It takes me about 20 minutes to actually do it. And maybe it was one time I was doing it, and I think I hit like my seventh pass, and I I was like, I've never felt so energetic. And I was like, what is this? Oh my gosh, my mind was going. I mean, it was like a 10 o'clock. I want us to be in open. I stood up to like 3 o'clock in the morning, and the thing and it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I wound up like calling my sister. I was like, I just had like this crazy practice. I couldn't go to sleep. And he was like, so what happened? I was practicing. He said, what did you feel? What was so distinctive about this one? I was like, I think I really had my first real breath, my first time breathing, like
Yeah,
deeply, deeply breathing, you
yeah,
know? And what comes to mind is like, think about if you're doing your 9 to 5, right? Or you're working on other people's project, you're doing other things. A lot of your movements is restricted and constricted to the things that you have, your obligations. It's not necessarily the obligations that you have for yourself. And you move differently. I do believe that when you start to become into your own, you just a lot more.
a
That
hundred
just
percent.
got me into a space in the practice where I was able to like, I say as a grown ass adult, that I was able to really, really and truly breathe deep into my lungs. And I mean, it was the level of energy that I was able to capture and garner in that moment. And at that time, I already been practicing for about 3 to 5 months. So it wasn't as if like I did it my first time and I'm like, ooh, ha.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
exactly. It
was,
wasn't like a kumbaya moment. It was like your
nah,
practice, your diligency on it, right? It's something you worked up to. Like,
yeah.
I think the way you're describing it, it's like you fully energetically opened yourself up and life hit you. You're like, and I think that happened to me, funny enough, when I did a laughing meditation at the park. And
Mm,
that was the first time that I actually took a deep belly breath. And when I took that deep belly breath and then I laughed, I was like, "This is the best drug ever. I need 10 of these bitches."
mm.
I don't know, like, it was just a sense of and let me tell you, my life has changed ever since that. Like, it was that got me to
Yeah.
be like and then all of a sudden, everything became so visual. I was like, "Oh my god, everything looks so bright, so beautiful." Like, I feel everything, and I think as you were saying, we don't recognize how much we become a ball. And just like not physically, but also energetically, we don't really open ourselves up to even experiencing what potentially may be out there, right? I think something I know that so many of us struggle with is this idea that I get to do all these things that I want to do when life slows down for me again. And I'm like, newsflash, it's never going to slow down. Like once you kind of crack yourself open, it's on you to create your own rhythm, your pace. You have to dictate it now and dictate when you get those breaks or when you can slow down or understand that more so than anything, you can't be the main call. You don't call the shots of like slowing down, right? You have to understand that life in itself is unpredictable and we're in very uncertain times. So you have to find those certain moments for yourself and create that. And it's through these practices that you're talking about where you're not only just energetically expanding within yourself and your being and tapping more into that, you're also opening yourself up to experience more of life and saying, "Hey, life, I can handle this. Like, I can do it."
Mm,
You know? And I think that's what, like, I had, like, I feel like once I laughed, I was like, "I can't believe a laugh is what cracked me open." And
mm,
as soon as I realized that, I was like, "I can't go back to that." Like, I gotta do, and I started doing laugh meditations, like, almost like that year, it was last year, and I was doing them almost every day as, like, my own form of, like, breath work. And now my laughs are deep in general, and so I love that. You know, low key, was that not like a Kundalini awakening? Have you ever heard of that?
I've, I've,
Kind of like when I look back at it and I looked at some of the things I created in that haze, I was like, yeah, bitch, you got activated. Like, cause it was at the base of my spine. Like that's where everything
mm,
bursted open. I was like, where did that come from?
mm,
But also for men, it might be your heart.
yeah, I think that I'm glad that you actually mentioned that. One of the things a colleague, when we start our meetings, he would say something like this, she would say, clear mind, clear heart, clear mind, clear heart. And I always found that so profound. Like, I never heard anyone start a meeting say that. And I think there's something to be said about purity, in the creative process
100%.
that I am I don't really get a chance to like express this or vocalize this often. So thank you for this opportunity,
Yeah.
to just think about this and like speak about it out loud. And by purity, I don't necessarily mean like the sanctity of like I'm making a mistake or not doing certain things, but to certain things, yes. But, this purity of just like, I'm not holding like any grudge, animosity, any resentment, any self doubt in just my own being, and not navigating the world through the need for validation, not navigating the world through the need to prove, just making sure that, my motivations and my actions are pure. And that's something that, being still in the moment, because you're always thinking about like, if I'm servicing my clients, I'm really always thinking about like, how can I best manifest their vision? Like, how can I best see something that's in their head or heart space that they're doing? And I just want to put forth something that really is an accurate representation of them. And it takes, I guess the words like you don't want to be full of this ego, but this idea of like, I know what it is, or I know how it should be. So therefore I close myself off, a very active and open and listening heart. And there's a purity that I feel like these practices help you or draw you more clearer or nearer to. So then when you do manifest for others, you do manifest for yourself, or you're just navigating the world, you kind of distinguish between, okay, like, am I reacting? Am I being proactive? I'm navigating in a world, based on what I know that I can sustain.
That's
The-
beautiful. I love that you
You
said that.
know, like something about what I'm doing here right now is I I could walk away and come back to this very memory and say, that's a brick that I'm happy that's been laid.
Right there. Yeah. No, and I am so glad that you went there because I think that's the biggest thing that I always tell people is the process of creation to me is my channel to God, right? It's God placed something in me, source placed something in me, this idea was planted in me. It has to move through me. And when it moves through me in the process of creation, the good and the bad are going to pop up, right? And I think that's something that I did not realize prior to that the belly laugh
Mhm.
that opened me up,
Right, right.
because when I actually looked at the actual sanctity of creation, it's like a return back to your own divinity, right? It's this idea that what you are creating, if it is coming from that place and that intention of being pure and being a steward or servant to source or God and just being a vessel, it is on our job to purify that vessel, right? It is our job to get into a place,
Mhm.
into a practice where that flow is a lot easier, that you can hear better, you can move better, it can be more enjoyable, and it doesn't have to be in a place where I'm trying to get a like or I'm trying to get this out so it could go to a client and they can react. It's an exchange, right? It's like what you receive is what you put out is what you receive, and so if I am creating something that has been placed on me and that
Mhm.
process of creation is zigzaggy, it's,
Mhm.
doubts, it's intentions for like, how am I gonna monetize this? If it's coming from a place of proving myself too, right? And you told me that, which helped me a lot. It is not coming from a place of pureness or even true to yourself. So, regardless of whether or not you can push through it and get it out, yes, congratulations, you got it done. But do you feel good about that? Do you feel good about that overall process? Because, as you
Mhm.
said, you focus on sustaining yourself, not getting yourself to the end goal. Like, if that's the case, you might as well focus on dying at that point, right? We're here to live. So, how can I think about my process of creation as, again, just my way of living? And that's why I
Mhm.
really had to create my own creative practice around my how I interact with life, because life in itself is what's helping me work through stuff. Because I wish I could sit here and say that I can create something without realizing something about myself, but I can't, and I actually don't want that.
Mhm.
Because the more I create, the more deeper I get to recognizing who I am and also removing the stories, the beliefs, the gunk that weighs me down. Like, that is
Yeah.
how I've had to be able to transmute all of that. And my mom always says, like, you're able to take a deep breath after all of that. You have more space to breathe. You have more space to process, to be you and to experience things in a more not clear manner, but in a more, I always say, magical. It is a very beautiful
Mhm.
process. And I think that's why it makes me mad when people focus on trends and follow. I'm like, I don't give a F about any of that stuff, because that's just not gonna last, and also you're clogging up and bringing the frequency down, and now look at us. Look at us. So, yeah, no, I
Mhm.
love it, and I always say, like, I feel it's funny that people always talk about, like, "Oh, you look younger, like, you're glowing. I've lost a lot of weight," and I'm like, "That's because of healing and transmuting and, like, really, like, all the tension and stress that my body held on to was released?" And it's like,
Mhm.
when you do that, your insides will start reflecting, right? Your outside, it will also start catching up to that. So, yeah, it's really interesting. I am really happy you feel that way. When I tell people that, they're like, "Alright, girl."
Yeah. Beautifully said, man.
Yeah, and so I think something that I really love when we were talking back a while ago was, again, how you are using all of this beautiful experience, creation, your own connection to life, and how does that translate to fatherhood, right? Like, for your daughter and your son. And happy belated birthday to a fellow Scorpio.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
how
I
are you kind of
appreciate that.
carrying that torch down for them?
Yes. Yes. Really what I'm have been noticing is you said something about like, as you explore your creative practice and you do things that you want to manifest, you get to see aspects of who you are, right? And it produces a certain level of, freedom. It produces a certain level of like, all right, I know I can do this. These things are out here in the world. I'm glad I'm putting it out there. And I think about like fatherhood is that out and look about children is the thing is that I'm not an owner. I'm a steward. I'm just here really as a father figure, father role, and doing the dad thing, right? I am here to extrapolate I'm here to, in a sense, make you sovereign, and that's the way I'm looking at it, right? And I have to exhibit and be that myself, and I think not necessarily in what I say, but more so, and not even so much in what I do, but how I make them feel around me.
Yeah, it's an
You
energy.
know,
Yeah.
it's an energy, it's the way that we move, like if we go into something that's, if we go to Chick-fil-A, and you got a whole
Yeah,
long line
Chick-fil-A
and
now.
woo,
There's a Chick-fil-A now right next to me. I was like,
yeah,
you're back in
oh,
business.
Mercury.
I got hella points. Hella points.
You
Sorry.
know, no, you gotta be
No,
sorry.
I mean, sorry to the like non Chick-fil-A supporters.
Now
I just
Chick-fil-A is before this, come on, you're missing that.
sorry. But I'm telling you, it's actually way, way better in the South. Way better. Taste, oh, 1,000%. I don't know what it is, but I honestly think maybe because they cook it with love. And they say, thank you. Like they'll have all the really nice mannerisms. They're like, you're
Yeah,
my pleasure. I'm like, thank you.
yeah, yeah. And I brought that up because, it's times if it's a long line, you know, I I just relax, and they pick up on your energy. And I wouldn't even say this. I feel like my daughter, and I think girls are even better at that. They really are arbiters of energy. You bring in life into this world, so
Yeah.
you're connected and tapped in a different way. And my daughter senses that I'm not like all there, or I'm not present. It's a palpable energy. You know, um, I'm 9 years into this, being that my son is 9, my daughter's 8. So I've kind of have grown to understand these subtleties of living and moving and navigating. So the way that I think about transmuting this energy is just making sure that I myself, like when we're doing homework, right? I'm present. I'm not,
You're a better man than me. You are a
you know,
better man than me. Because the moment I'm like, what is 3 plus 2? And if they say 6, I'm like, no, no. I had to tutor my siblings, and there are 7 of them. So
mm,
I was like, how many apples does Johnny have? I'm like, I
yeah.
can't do this anymore. But you know what? They're your kids. I'm just a sister.
But you know what? It's patience. And if you think about the
Yeah.
creative process, the key to it all is having patience. Patience is so key. I can guarantee the level of patience that I have in allowing for them to navigate and make mistakes. How do I relate to them? Do I get disturbed, or do I get like kind of out of whack and out of sorts and start to like get the pressure on them? And then I do the same thing to me when I'm in my own creative process.
Yeah.
So uh, you know, just having children are is a reflection of where you're at, and how you want to elevate and grow and navigate, and even how you engage in everything else. Best believe that's going to show up there. And then they can immediately give you in real time their responses, because they sort of develop
Yeah.
a certain character over time and how they navigate challenges.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
always wanted them to be resilient. I always wanted them to have an internal dialogue uh, of they can, they will, they must, and it's paid off. I don't, I'm the most, I don't want to like, I don't go around staying on this and on that. But if there's
I don't get the data
anything in my life
weird.
that I would, dust my shoulders off, pop my collar,
You
say,
should,
I would
bro.
say is being a father, really being
Yeah.
a father, and my daughter, she had, I got, uh, she had wrote this. I'm going to highlight this because she actually wrote her friend an affirmation, and our friend an affirmation. And when I read this, I was like,
So
so it was like,
beautiful.
it's paying off,
It is.
it's
Yeah.
really paying off. And in turn, them, and I want to just relate it back to like, creatively what I'm doing there. Seeing them be more expressive and literally encouraged and inspired me to do the same, you know? So it's like just a blessing and opportunity to, really pour into someone. And if you like, if you got an opportunity to create the world you want to inherit just by giving the best to these particular people. And then
Yeah.
even expanding it beyond just my children, their community of friends, and bringing them into the fold. And by bringing them into the fold, being it's like, hey, when they spend time together, over their house and we're doing something, and I'm like, we all doing art together, so it's just a beautiful experience.
Oh, I'm crying. As a daddy's girl, like my father is like honestly like again just going into like my journey like
Mm,
when I got to a really really dark place in January, my dad was the one that saved my life. He was the
mm,
one that texted me right in that moment that I needed him exactly, right? And if he
mm,
had not texted me, I don't think I would have been here. So it was like him and I have
mm,
always had that bond where we've like felt very like I was like twins. Like we have very we move and we operate in very same ways. And it has been it's always been a blessing to have grown up with a father who not only accepted, like he really embodied himself fully, his emotions, the range of it, and also took responsibility for it, but also made it known what his role is as a father, right? And asking us if he's living up to it. You know, like I think that was a very beautiful thing where he's like, I always want to be able to be the dad I didn't have, but I also want to do it in a way where I'm not operating from my wounded self. I'm operating from what it is that you're becoming. Like rather than saying, I mean, granted, my dad was like, you could be whatever you want. And the reason that I am this confident, cocky person, I'm always going to say it, I enjoy it is because I
mm,
got it from him. He has always told me, no matter what you put your mind to, you will get it done. Whatever you set your heart out to do, it will always happen. And he would always say that no matter what. And he would always say, no matter what you do, just know I have your back. And I think just having that, especially as like a young woman in a world, like it is a very healthy like relationship, but also like rock to go to, right?
mm,
Where it's like I feel very protected. And when I feel that way, I'm able to feel more open to life. I'm able
mm,
to be more expressive. I'm able to engage because I know that not saying my sense of safety is attached to someone, but there's an element of, you know, I got someone who has me, and I have someone that can give me that real conversation about like, is this what I want to do? Is it not? And so, I've always felt very grateful that I've been able to have that experience. And I think it's helped
mm,
me also navigate my own relationships with men and be able to know how to operate in that space without necessarily bringing any of that kind of drama or whatever social media and all that jazz talks about. And
mm,
ultimately see people as individuals more than anything. And he's a very, very deeply expressive person, and it's been beautiful to just show. I feel like now I'm like a little kid. I'm like, Dad, listen to my new song, and he's like,
mm,
thanks. Thanks. But it's like one of those things where, like, yeah,
absolutely.
it's like it's not just allowing your children to fully express and become themselves. I'd imagine that an essence of you, a part of you is also tapping back into your own inner child when you're with them, right? Like, uh-oh,
Talking about inner child, it can I interject real quick?
please.
You're right about that because
Yeah.
yesterday it was Veterans Day, and so you know, they're home with me, and we're doing math homework. And one thing I'll just say this: math has been one of those things. Over time I started like had to get better because I'm working with them, right? And this new math is different math. They got something
They
going on.
got new math out there?
They got new math out here. They trying to do multiple ways just to get to the. I'm like, but whatever. And I
Oh,
say this to
oh.
say a child, right? So I had an inner child, an inner spirit, right? That my son was able to bring up. So he was like, I said, hey, I've been, I used to have trouble, with math. And I was like, doing these particular subtraction, these big numbers, right? And he was like, well, if you had trouble doing it, why do you just ask? your mom and dad to help you out. He said that. And I was like, now I have an opportunity, to make up some cockamamie thing or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Answer him directly and honestly, 'cause I'm like, all right, you know what, Caleb, actually, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. And I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't feel comfortable enough to do
Wow.
so. And I didn't actually feel secure enough to actually do so. And that's something that I'm always telling them to always make sure if you need something, just say something. But when he asked me, my whole relationship to math as a kid was horrible because, well, at that time, my parents are going through like major family stuff. So I'm just get introduced to a particular topic. I'm just like, I ain't trying to think about math. I'm thinking about house stuff. And when I could
Yeah.
have went to them, I just was like, I don't know about asking them. I'm talking about this stuff. They just seem like they're consumed with adult stuff. So I just kept it into myself and I just like
Wow.
navigated this space of not really knowing, but knowing just enough to actually get past from one level to another. And it was something that and then, he said, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to do a math test right now.
I would have let
My-
that drop. I'm so sorry. I was like, that's a
yeah,
good explanation, but I'm
yes.
still not gonna figure it out.
So, but to
But
the idea of like,
yeah.
flow,
Mhm.
to the idea of just letting, now in this inner child, right, be healed, do my own child. He's seeing an
That's
opportunity to
beautiful.
do something. And so he comes up with 4 equations. Um, and I said, well, Caleb, Dad, when you subtracting those numbers, he's 9 years old. Like because I knew I wasn't good at math. We said we gonna get them a tutor. We gonna do all that stuff. So he's like living the life like, yes, you good at math. And he writes out the equation for me, and I said, well, you're gonna have to demonstrate to me how to do this on this, like subtraction at this number. Like, show me how you
Mhm.
do it. And for me and my internal self, I had to deal with the certain same levels of feeling embarrassment, because
Yeah.
he's like, I'm a child. He said, I should be teaching you. I said, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know everything. Like, you teach me. So I had to avail myself to a 9-year-old who had insight on how to do this. And I said, teach me how to do it. He walked me through it. He gave me 4 questions. I got one right. Well, I was so happy. I
I know,
felt
right?
so good, Manny. I
Yeah.
felt that, wow, in this moment in time, I was able to, in a sense, heal my inner child through my child, but also be honest with where I was at and what disrupted myself. And also drew this correlation between even right now, we talked about this idea of like, being an artist, being a designer, embracing the fullness of who you are. There
Yeah.
was aspects about who I knew that I have inside of me that I wasn't too sure to put forth out in the world because of what I may feel particularly embarrassed about, or maybe the world is not ready to receive or accept this aspect of me. And I
Yeah.
had to decouple that. So to
Yeah.
me, you know, whether I'm showing up, and it goes back to this idea again of no matter what aspects of my lane of where I'm be sitting in today or this function of this role, this is constant nudge of becoming a more fluent person within my own self. And every opportunity is an opportunity to do that. And, I was like, well, if like doing this math problem is chopping, chiseling away at this inner trauma of embarrassment, then so be it. You know, I'm not going to
Yeah.
be
I'd
in
rather come
my,
from the hands of your son than from a hard lesson. You know what I mean?
I'm complete. I've learned a lot in that moment. And I was glad that I was present enough. I was glad I was present enough to receive that, not trying to just get the homework done. Because
That's a
we wound up
beautiful
doing,
part.
it took us an extra 30 extra minutes because we were doing everything else in between. Meaning like he gave me the, thing. He got so engrossed into doing it. We didn't actually do his real homework at that moment. We were doing the assignment that he gave me. But if I was so focused on getting the homework done, I would have never had that moment. I would have just brushed it off and said, okay, let's just go on to this next thing. but
Yeah.
I was aware enough, and I thank God that I was aware enough to be present enough to say this is an opportunity to be honest, transparent with what I know that I had challenged with in the past, and say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna take this as an opportunity right there, right now.
100%. And I even think that translates to so much of creative work, right? Like so much of us try to race to get something done rather than genuinely being present and recognizing those little roadblocks or hesitations or maybe like why is it the resistance, right? Like I think
Mm,
we've been not necessarily conditioned, right? We've been taught first that to do something, it should be easy. If it's hard, then either don't do it or we have to push through that resistance, right? But there's a part in which you have to be honest with yourself of is it you pushing through the resistance because it's something internal that you're working through that's like, either that's the thing or it's not the thing, or are you doing that because you just want to get it done and you just want to get that feeling off of your chest? It's like at the end of the day, you didn't really allow yourself to fully integrate that experience. You allowed yourself to recognize something happened and release it. And I think that's where that burnout comes. That's where what am I doing now? I don't feel connected anymore because you're just kind of skipping the heart, right? You're skipping the presence, you're skipping the actual like embodiment of
mm,
thing that's moving through you. You're trying to just remove the discomfort or just trying to get over the thing or trying to get something done on your to-do list. And yeah, I even think that that's a lesson that as you said that, I was like, shit, I need to do that. And I think it's not necessarily from a place of embarrassment, but it is a place of understanding if that time is warranted. Like, do I deserve that time to dedicate to myself to cultivate my craft, to learn more about something so I can know how to use it in a way where this idea can grow further with it. I
mm,
think, especially when it comes to my own creativity, I've had to
yes.
learn how to do everything by myself. I've had to learn how to
Mm,
piecemeal things. I've had to learn how to be, low effort, but like be able to do it in a way where I'm still getting the essence of whatever it is I'm creating down. And even for example, like this, right? Like you and I talking, it was really funny because my roommate was like, well, if you want to take this to the next level, what's more important to you to get it done or to reschedule and wait until you get the camera and the mic? And then that was a moment where I had to sit and say, well, in essence, currently where I'm at, ultimately, this idea of the podcast, right, is not the full product. It is the milestone. It is me saying,
mm,
I'm working towards that bigger vision because I have a bigger vision of a show, right? And so if I'm saying that, what is most important to me? It's not just having this where I can talk to you and build my interviewing skills or, to be able to showcase these amazing people in my life. It's also how can we create something interesting together outside of just us talking, right? So it's like a lot of the concepts that I've been able to create with people are like, we'll
mm.
talk, but we'll also do something. We'll like, have an activity, but we're also teaching people and we're sharing their story. And so where can people find you? And also you talked about an exhibit you're putting together. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Any details or
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm just putting all the pieces together for it, but it's for the art practice, no rhyme, no reason, and I am really trying to hone in exactly what this actually means for me. And I feel like the best part of this experience is that I do not know what the theme is. I have all of the assets. I know I'm creating something. It's coming together, but I can't really tell you where I'm going with it. Like the next frontier
yeah.
of my creative practice right now is writing.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay. Oh, I
I'm
love
really
it.
called to just write and do poetry. So I've been finding little ways to do it, develop myself and get into that particular space. But right now, I really wanted to, at least when I'm locking in on right now, is really dealing with fear. Um, Releasing fear, letting go of fear, understanding your fear, decoupling fear, however it's showing up in my particular life, and what does it mean to embody that? in my own personhood in terms of activating and living like my full joy, So like shedding away these things that just hold and bog you down into being like this full self, this full me, this full expressive me. So
I'm so excited to see it. It's going to be beautiful. Amazing. Well, Isaiah, where can the folks find you?
on Instagram, you can find me at Isaiah underscore Frazier, so ISAIAH underscore Frazier, FRAZIER underscore. And within that is links to my like design studio and November. So yeah. Or you can find my site, Unbothered.design. That's studio. See the work and all that good stuff. So
Yay! Well, thank you so much,
thank
Isaiah,
you.
for coming on. This has been amazing. And thank you guys for tuning into Moving Mad. We'll see you guys whenever we see you guys. Okay, now bye.
Each